Expand your vocabulary with our core 2,000 words ebook. It's free and packed with essential expressions that you'll use on a daily basis. Start building your vocabulary today. Click the link in the description below to download your free French ebook before it's gone.
Salut, je m'appelle Ingrid. Hi everybody, I'm Ingrid. Welcome to FrenchPod101.coms, le français en 3 minutes. The fastest, easiest and most fun way to learn French. In the last lesson, we learned how to be grateful to people by saying merci. In this lesson, we'll learn some of the other most common greetings used in France. Vous êtes prêts? Are you ready? Alors, c'est parti. Let's start. The most used informal greeting is salut. Salut. Salut means hi, hello, or goodbye. We use it when we meet but also when we leave. We should only use this greeting with friends and family. And now, let's continue by discussing the formal way to greet people. The one you are probably used to hearing is bonjour, bonjour. Literally, bonjour means good day. However, we may also interpret it as good morning or good afternoon. As a rule of thumb, we can use bonjour only during the daytime, from morning until evening. During the evening, we say bonsoir, bonsoir. Soir is French for evening, so bonsoir means good evening. Bonjour and bonsoir are used when we meet someone, but when we leave, we don't say them again. In this formal situation, French people use au revoir, au revoir. Au revoir means goodbye. Finally, in French, we have an expression meaning see you soon that can be considered both formal and informal. À bientôt. À bientôt. Now, you can greet people in many different ways in French. Let's review them all again. When meeting someone informally, we say salut. When meeting someone formally, we say bonjour or bonsoir. When living in a formal situation, au revoir. When living, no matter whether it's formal or informal situation, à bientôt. It's easy, isn't it? Now it's time for Ingrid's insights. In formal situation, French people commonly greet each other by shaking hands. On the other hand, if we meet someone we are really friends with, we kiss each other on both cheeks. Don't be afraid to do it with your French friends, it's normal. During the next lesson, we'll learn the meaning of the phrase Parlez-vous anglais? Do you already know it? We'll be waiting to talk about it with you in our next Le Français en 3 minutes lesson. À bientôt! Welcome to FrenchPod101.coms, le français en 3 minutes. The fastest, easiest and the most fun way to learn French. Salut, je m'appelle Ingrid. Enchantée. Hi, I'm Ingrid. Nice to meet you. In this series, we are going to learn basic French expressions. It's super easy and it only takes 3 minutes. In this lesson, you're going to learn how to introduce yourself in French. There are only 2 sentences you need to do it. But first, it is important to clarify that in French, there is a difference between the formal and the informal language. Let's first see how French people introduce themselves in an informal situation. Salut, je m'appelle Ingrid. Enchantée de te rencontrer. Hi, I'm Ingrid. Nice to meet you. Salut, je m'appelle Ingrid. Enchantée de te rencontrer. Start by saying salut, je m'appelle. Then say your name. Salut, je m'appelle Ingrid. Finally, say enchantée de te rencontrer. Salut, je m'appelle Ingrid. Enchantée de te rencontrer. And now, let's see the same sentence in formal speech. Bonjour, je m'appelle Ingrid Dubreuil. Je suis enchantée de vous rencontrer. Good morning, I'm Ingrid Dubreuil. Nice to meet you. Bonjour, je m'appelle Ingrid Dubreuil. Je suis enchantée de vous rencontrer. So, what has changed from the previous introduction? Let's take a closer look at this together. Salut has been substituted with the formal greeting bonjour, French for good day. Je m'appelle Ingrid has not been changed. Je m'appelle stands in both cases for I am. However, during a formal self-introduction, we always say our last name, so I said Ingrid Dubreuil. Here, you would say your full name. Finally, pay attention to the ending. We went from te rencontrer to vous rencontrer. What is changing is the French word for you. In a formal sentence, we use the more polite word vous. One more time. The informal way to introduce yourself in French is Salut, je m'appelle Ingrid. Enchantée de te rencontrer. The formal way to introduce yourself is Bonjour, je m'appelle Ingrid Dubreuil. Je suis enchantée de vous rencontrer. Now it's time for Ingrid's Insights. When you introduce yourself, it's a good habit to shake hands in France, and if you are not sure whether to use Enchanté de te rencontrer or Enchanté de vous rencontrer, just simply say Enchanté, as I said at the beginning of this lesson. If you use the correct sentence with French people, they are definitely going to be impressed. Do you know how we say thank you in French? You will learn how to say this and many other words in the next lesson. À bientôt pour la prochaine leçon. See you then! Salut, je m'appelle Ingrid. Hi everybody, I'm Ingrid. Welcome to FrenchPod101.com's Le Français en 3 minutes. The fastest, easiest and most fun way to learn French. In the last lesson, we learned how to introduce ourselves in French. Today, we are going to learn how to use good manners as we thank people. Vous êtes prêts? Are you ready? Alors, c'est parti! So, let's start. There are several ways to thank someone. Let's start with the easiest. It is just one word. Merci. Merci. Merci means thank you. When saying thank you very much, you just need to add beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Beaucoup means a lot. So merci beaucoup is like saying thank you very much. During the last lesson, we mentioned both the informal and the formal way of speaking French. Merci is the casual way to thank someone. If you want to be more formal, there is another phrase you should use. Je vous remercie. Je vous remercie. Let's break this phrase down. Je is I, and vous is the formal word for you. Remercie means give thanks. I give thanks to you. Je vous remercie. How do you answer? It's easy. There are basically two different ways to do it. The first is de rien. De rien. De rien literally means it's nothing, but it is the equivalent of you are welcome. The other way to say you are welcome is the expression je vous en prie. Je vous en prie. Literally, this phrase means I beg you to do it or please do, but it has become a common and polite way to respond to someone thanking you. So when someone's saying merci to you, we can simply reply with de rien or je vous en prie. Now it's time for Ingrid's Insights. If you're not sure about whether to use merci or je vous remercie, just keep it simple. You don't have to worry about formal or informal situations. Merci can be used with just about anyone, anywhere or at any time. Do you know what au revoir means? In our next lesson, you will learn this and other greetings in French. À bientôt et merci à la prochaine leçon. Salut, je m'appelle Ingrid. Hi everybody, I'm Ingrid. Welcome to FrenchPod101.com's Le Français en 3 minutes. the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn French. In the last lesson, we learned the most common forms of greetings in French. Do you remember them? In this lesson, we are going to learn a very useful phrase. Do you speak English? If you find yourself in a situation where you need assistance in English, this phrase can be a lifesaver. And because you're asking it in French, you can be sure that everyone will understand what you're saying, even if their answer is no. Here's the informal way to say it. Est-ce que tu parles anglais? Est-ce que tu parles anglais? In French, verbs change depending on the pronoun that is used. Please notice the word tu in the middle of the sentence. Remember that this is the informal way to say you. The next word is the verb parler, which means to speak. Because it's referring to tu, it's conjugated to tu parles. Est-ce que is an interrogative form to introduce a question. It is similar to the English word do here. And you probably recognize anglais, that is English. Est-ce que tu parles anglais? To learn how to properly conjugate verbs like parler, please look at the Absolute Beginner series on FrenchPod101.com. You can find very detailed grammar lessons and resources there. We are now going to make this sentence formal. First, we need to use a formal version of you, which is vous. If we change the word to vous, we will conjugate parler differently. It becomes this, but it's pronounced the same way, parler. Est-ce que vous parlez anglais? Est-ce que vous parlez anglais? Adding excuse-moi, excuse me, the sentence becomes even more polite. Excusez-moi, est-ce que vous parlez anglais? Excusez-moi, est-ce que vous parlez anglais? The responses you will receive could be one of these three. Oui, yes. Oui. Un peu, a little. Un peu. Non, je ne parle pas anglais. No, I don't speak English. Non, je ne parle pas anglais. Since this last one is a negative statement, we need to say ne before the verb, parle, and pas after it. Notice that the verb parle is slightly different from parler. Remember, the verb changed depending on the pronoun used. We are now talking about je, French for I, thus I don't speak is je ne parle pas. Now it's time for Ingrid's insights. For those of you who are not only English speakers, you can obviously use this question with any other language you need. French people study other European languages at school, so maybe you will get lucky. Just substitute anglais with English, Italien for Italian, Russe for Russian, Espagnol for Spanish, Allemand for German, and any other languages. In this lesson, we mentioned the expression excusez-moi. But did you know that this could also be used as an apology? In the next lesson, we will learn this and other ways to apologize in French. It's never too late to show your good manners with French people. I'll see you in our next Le Français en 3 minutes. À bientôt! Salut, je m'appelle Ingrid. Hi everybody, I'm Ingrid. Welcome to FrenchPod101.com's Le Français en 3 minutes, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn French. In the last lesson, we learned the phrase Excusez-moi. Est-ce que vous parlez anglais? Excuse me, do you speak English? We mentioned the word Excusez-moi, which means excuse me, in formal French. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to use Excusez-moi and other words when apologizing in French. We should use excusez-moi in formal situations, such as when you are ordering something in bars or restaurants. For example, excusez-moi, un café s'il vous plaît. Excuse me, a coffee please. Excusez-moi, un café s'il vous plaît. We can also use it when asking a question. Excusez-moi, où est la Tour Eiffel? Excuse me, where is the Eiffel Tower? Excusez-moi, où est la Tour Eiffel? Sometimes we also hear people saying s'il vous plaît, which means the same thing when you want to draw somebody's attention. We always use this phrase in formal speech. S'il vous plaît. The informal way to say excuse me is excuse-moi. Excuse-moi. Just like excusez-moi, we can use excuse-moi when asking a question or when apologizing. We can also use the word pardon. You might hear this phrase translated as forgive me in English, but it's not formal or strong at all. French people use it in very casual situations. All of these phrases can be used for either excuse me or I'm sorry. But if you really want to apologize for something, it might be better to use a different phrase. That phrase is je suis désolé. It means I am sorry, and can be used in both formal and informal situations. Je suis désolé. First, we have the familiar je or I. Next, we insert the French word for to be, être. When this is conjugated for je in French, it is suis. Finally, we have the adjective désolé, meaning sorry. Je suis désolé. Now it's time for Ingrid's insights. Please remember that in France, if you accidentally bump into someone, we don't say I'm sorry. Je suis désolé. Instead, we say excusez-moi, excuse me, or pardon, forgive me. Are you able to count in French? In the next lesson, we will learn the numbers in French from 1 to 10. I'll be waiting for you in the next lesson, le français en 3 minutes. À bientôt pour la prochaine leçon. Salut, je m'appelle Ingrid. Hi everybody, I'm Ingrid. Welcome to FrenchPod101.com, le français en 3 minutes. The fastest, easiest, and the most fun way to learn French. In the last lesson, we learned some words used when apologizing in French, including excusez-moi and je suis désolé. In this lesson, we are going to learn numbers in French. Yes, numbers, les nombres, from 1 to 10. And you are going to learn them in only 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Are you ready? Let's start. 1. 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8, 8, 9, 9, 10, 10. Okay, now repeat after me. I'll say the numbers and give you time to repeat each one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Great job! So what is before 1? Do you know? It's the same as in English, but with a different pronunciation. Zéro. Zéro. You don't have any more excuses. You can give your friends your cell phone number in French. Let's try together. We'll use the phrase Mon numéro c'est le, which means my number is. Mon numéro c'est le. Mon numéro c'est le 3 3 7 1 2 2 4 9 6 8. Can you read it by yourself? 3 3 7 1 2 2 4 9 6 8. Perfect. Now it's time for Ingrid's insights. When we go to the post office in France, we sometimes have to stand in line with a number. When it's your turn to check out, they scream numéro 1, numéro 10, and so on. Learn your numbers well so you can be ready. Do you know the French word for 100? In the next lesson, we are going to learn the numbers from 11 to 100 in French. Your task now is to practice the numbers we studied in this lesson, from 1 to 10. À bientôt pour la prochaine leçon! Salut, je m'appelle Ingrid. Hi everybody, I'm Ingrid. Welcome to FrenchPod101.com's Le Français en 3 minutes. The fastest, easiest and the most fun way to learn French. In the last lesson, we learned the numbers from 1 to 10. Have you forgotten? Here, I'll tell you again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now, let's continue from 11. 11, 11, 12, 12, 13, 13, 14, 14, 15, 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19. And finally, we have 20, 20. Okay, now repeat after me. I'll say the numbers and give you time to repeat each one. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. These numbers may seem harder to remember, but you really just have to memorize 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 20. But for 17, 18, 19, the numbers always start with 10 or 10. Let's not stop at 20. Counting from 10 to 100 is super easy. Now I'll give you the tens. 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. While you have to memorize a few of these numbers, there are a couple of tricks that will make memorizing them incredibly easy. Notice that 60 is 60 and 70 is 70. Do you remember what this means? Of course, it is a number for 10. So 70 is simply 60-10, 70. 70. 80 is 80. Can you break this down? The first part, which we learned in the previous lesson, is 4. The second part we learned earlier in this lesson. What does it mean? That's right, 20. So altogether, saying 80 is like saying 4 20s. 4 20. And 90, 90, is just like 70. Add 10 to the number before. 80 plus 10 is 90. 90. 90. The last thing to learn today is how to form compound numbers above 20. This is also super easy. Take the tens and simply add the numbers you learned in the previous lesson. Let's try it out. How would you say 56 in French? Let's take it step by step. 50 is 50, and then add 6. 56. It's done. Isn't that easy? Let's make another number. For instance, 98. Take 90, 90, and add 8. 98. One last tricky part. If you're trying to add the number 1 in the compound number, for example 21 or 31, you need to add an et before 1. 21 is not 21, it is 21. 31 is 31. After only 2 lessons, you're now able to count to 100 in French. In the next lesson, we are going to put your number knowledge to use. Do you have the skills to go shopping in France? If not, I'll be waiting for you in the next lesson, le français en 3 minutes. À bientôt pour la prochaine leçon! Salut, je m'appelle Ingrid. Hi everybody, I'm Ingrid. Welcome to FrenchPod101.com's Le français en 3 minutes. The fastest, the easiest and the most fun way to learn French. In the last lesson, we learned how to count in French. I hope you spent some time practicing the numbers because they will come in handy today. We are going to learn how to go shopping in France. Before we go, you need to know how to say how much is it? Combien ça coûte? Combien ça coûte? Are you ready to go shopping in France? Let's go! You see something you like and want to ask the shop clerk how much it costs. The first thing to say to a shop clerk is, Excusez-moi. Do you remember what that means? Excuse me. Excusez-moi, combien ça coûte? Excusez-moi, combien ça coûte? If you want to be more specific when asking how much is it and refer to a certain type of object, we first need to drop the word ça. Next, we need to know if the object is a feminine or masculine object. If it is masculine, add ce when referring to it, or cette for a feminine object, and then say the noun. For example, hat is a masculine word. Chapeau. Excusez-moi, combien coûte ce chapeau? Excuse me, how much is that hat? Excusez-moi, combien coûte ce chapeau? And skirt is a feminine noun. Jupe. Excusez-moi, combien coûte cette jupe? Excuse me, how much is this skirt? Excusez-moi, combien coûte cette jupe? At this point, the shop clerk can answer by saying ça coûte, ça fait, or c'est. For example, ça coûte 39 euros. Ça fait 39 euros. Or, c'est 39 euros. What number is 39? I'm not telling you. Okay, it's 39. It costs 39 euros. Now it's time for Ingrid's insights. A quicker way to ask how much is c'est combien, which literally means how much. Even when you ask for a coffee, you can ask the cashier, un café c'est combien s'il vous plaît? One espresso please, how much is it? At this point, can you count euros in French? We are going to learn how to do this and much more in the next lesson. I'll be waiting for you in our next lesson, le français en 3 minutes. À bientôt pour la prochaine leçon!
Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I express doubt or uncertainty? In English, we usually use modal verbs to express doubt or uncertainty, like might or would. French, however, doesn't have modal verbs. You have to use completely different constructions. Let's start with might, as in I might go to the party. The easiest way to do this is to simply add the adverb peut-être, meaning maybe. So you would get je vais peut-être à la fête. Another way to say might or may is to use il se peut que plus the subjunctive. For example, il se peut que la voiture soit en panne, meaning it is possible that the car is broken down, or the car might be broken down. But be careful, if you want to say something might have happened in the past, you have to use past subjunctive. So, for example, il se peut que je l'ai lu. This means I might have read it, or it's possible that I've read it. Let's move on to could and take the sentence I could eat a whale. In this case, you're speaking about something you could do in the future. So you use the conditional of the verb can, which is pouvoir. And you get je pourrais manger une baleine. But let's say you want to talk about something you could have done in the past. In this case, you would use pouvoir in the past perfect. For example, j'aurais pu manger une baleine, meaning I could have eaten a whale. Now, let's look at would. You probably already know this form in the present tense. For example, je voudrais le croque-monsieur. I would like the croque-monsieur. This is the conditional present. You may also remember it from a previous lesson about if statements. For example, on partirait si vous étiez prêt, meaning we would leave if you were ready. This is case 2, an unlikely situation that could come true if something else happened first. If you want to say that you would have in the past, then just conjugate the verb in the conditional perfect. For example, j'aurais voulu un croque-monsieur, meaning I would have liked a croque-monsieur. Finally, let's talk about should. Should is conjugated as the conditional of the verb devoir, meaning to have to or must. Then you add the infinitive of the verb that you should have done. For example, je devrais manger, meaning I should eat. Or on devrait partir, meaning we should leave. This is a very helpful construction. So make sure to memorize the conditional present tense of devoir. If you want to talk about something you should have done, conjugate devoir in the conditional perfect. I should have eaten would be j'aurais dû manger. We should have left would be on aurait dû partir. You should have memorized it would be vous auriez dû le mémoriser. And that's it. I hope that helped. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, while I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are bandes dessinées? Bandes dessinées are comics and they are an important part of French culture. France has the third largest comic book market in the world, after US and Japan. In fact, BDs are often called le neuvième art, or the ninth art. Unlike typical comics, which are usually funny or just for kids, French BDs can be about almost any subject and for any age. Bandes dessinées are also a great way to improve your French, since many are targeted to children. You may already know some. It should be noted that a lot of these BDs were made by Belgian authors. Les BD franco-belges are comics that are made for French and Belgian audiences. Because they share the same language, they often share comics as well. Here are some popular series you might want to check out. Les Aventures de Tintin, or The Adventures of Tintin, is a famous comic about a young detective, his dog, and his strange friends. Astérix is a funny series about Gauls resisting the Romans. There's also the Smurfs, or as they're known in France, les Schtroumpfs, were created in Belgium. A more recent comic is Le bleu est une couleur chaude. It was recently made into the film. Blue is the warmest color. Persepolis is another recent bande dessinée about a girl growing up during the Iranian Revolution. So if you want to improve your French, try reading bande dessinée. It will help you with French grammar, vocab, and culture while reading interesting stories. That's it. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are the different uses of chez? This is a good example of a word that has multiple meanings. You've probably already learned that chez plus a personal pronoun means home. For example, je rentre chez moi means I'm going back home. But it can also mean at an office. For example, j'ai trouvé un emploi chez Disney means I found a job at Disney. And j'ai un rendez-vous chez le médecin means I have a meeting at the doctor's office. Finally, chez can be translated as among or pertaining to. For example, chez les Français, c'est normal de manger du cheval means among French people, it's normal to eat horse meat. And chez les Américains, les socialistes sont assez rares means among Americans, socialists are rather rare. And chez lui, c'est bizarre means that's strange for him. So to recap, chez can be a preposition to refer to someone's house or office. But it can also be a more figurative preposition, meaning for them, amongst these people, etc. It has a fairly broad meaning and can be used in lots of situations. For example, if you want to talk about American culture or politics, you can use the same phrase, chez les Américains. As long as the subject is understood, chez works just fine. Try to incorporate it into your spoken French. You will sound much more fluent, even when you don't know a word. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below, and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, why are French words spelled so differently from how they are pronounced? French spelling and pronunciation may be one of the biggest stumbling blocks for French learners. And there are lots of reasons why French words look so different from how they are pronounced. The main reason is history. The French language is often called a mix between Latin, from the Romans, and Gaulish, the ancient language of Gaul, or modern-day France and Belgium. Latin was used as the writing system, but over time, as more people became literate, French also became a written language. The only problem was that there was no standardized way of spelling. Guérir, to heal, was sometimes spelled with an A. Fromage was sometimes spelled like this. François was famously spelled with a Y. And remember that many of the people who could read and write also knew Latin. So when l'Académie Française was tasked with standardizing French, there was a big debate. Should French be spelled the way it sounds, or should it show its Latin roots? For this reason, it might feel like you are only pronouncing half a word. This is to show its Latin origins, which were once pronounced. Or just as important, the pronunciation might have changed while the spelling stayed the same. For example, the en ending of third-person plural verbs used to be pronounced. Now it's silent and just sounds like the third-person singular. It also led to some interesting spelling innovations. For example, the circumflex. This accent means that an S used to follow the letter. Fête used to be fest or feast. Bête used to be best or beast. So the short answer is that oral language changes while spelling often stays the same. However, in 2016, the Academy made spelling reforms. If you pay attention, you can see language changing all the time. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, why do some verbs sometimes use être and sometimes use avoir to make passé composé? As you might remember, some verbs in passé composé are conjugated with être instead of avoir. These verbs are our Dr. and Mrs. Van der Trump verbs. Dr. and Mrs. Van der Trump is a mnemonic device for remembering the verbs conjugated with être. They are verbs associated with movement and change. But sometimes you will see a Van der Trump verb conjugated with avoir instead. Why? It all has to do with meaning. If you are talking about the subject moving or changing, use être. You use avoir as your auxiliary verb when there is an object involved. Let's take a look and see how the meaning changes with some examples. Je suis sortie le soir means I went out for the night. J'ai sorti les valises means I took out the suitcases. Because the action is happening to the suitcases, you use avoir. Je suis montée means I went up, while j'ai monté les valises means I brought up the suitcases. And je suis descendue du train means I got off the train. J'ai descendu les valises means I brought down the suitcases. Je suis rentrée means I came back home, while j'ai rentré les chiens means I brought in the dogs. Je suis retournée à la ville means I came back to the city, while j'ai retourné la table means I turned the table over. Here's a tricky one. Je suis montée dans l'ascenseur. J'ai monté l'escalier. The first means I went upstairs in the elevator, and the second means I took the stairs up. So be careful. Passé is a special verb because the meanings are very different. Je suis passée par la librairie means I passed by the bookstore, or I went by the bookstore. J'ai passé l'été à Dakar means I spent the summer in Dakar. If you want to describe movement, use être to conjugate passé. If you want to talk about figurative passing, like passing time, use avoir. For example, elle est passée par la porte means she went out through the door. And elle a passé le week-end avec son copain means she spent the weekend with her boyfriend. Finally, il m'a passé le sel means he passed me the salt. So remember that if you conjugate with avoir, the action is happening to a direct object. If you use être, the action is happening to you. That's it. I hope that answered your question. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are some good recommendations for studying French through movies and music? You could write a book to answer this question, but we'll try to be short. France has been at the heart of movie culture since the beginning of cinema. Nouvelle Vague, or New Wave, was an art movement in the 50s and 60s. François Truffaut was one of its most important metteurs en scène, or directors. The 400 Blows, or Les 400 Coups, and Stolen Kisses, or Baiser volé, are some of the films he made about one character, Antoine Douanel, from childhood to adulthood. And they used the same actor from when he was a boy until he was an adult. The Battle of Algiers or La Bataille d'Alger is actually an Italian film, but it's about France's loss of their colony Algeria. It's a very intense film and stars some people who were actually involved in the Algerian War. If you want to learn more about the north of France, check out Welcome to the Sticks or Bienvenue chez les Ch'tis. This is a more recent comedy and plays heavily on northern stereotypes, so take it with a grain of salt. Hate or La Haine is another very intense film. It takes place in the suburbs or banlieue of Paris. Another good film that takes place in Les Banlieues is Girlhood or Bande de Filles. It follows a teenage girl growing up in the suburbs. You might want to relax a bit after watching these intense films. For that, I would recommend Le Fabuleux Destin d'Amélie Poulain, which is also known as Amélie. This is a very popular movie from France and is known for its romantic portrayal of Paris. Another fun film is Children of Paradise, or Les Enfants du Paradis, an old movie about a very talented mime. For music, we'll go over some of the major French stars. Serge Gainsbourg is like the Bob Dylan of France, but with a great love for controversy. In his songs, he covers everything: the 60s, his love affairs with the most beautiful woman in France, reggae, his daughter. He also sings about World War II, which, as a young Jewish boy, he spent hiding in an orphanage. You might already know Edith Piaf's music from the film Inception. A film was also made about her life called La Môme, better known as La Vie en Rose. If you like more modern music, I recommend NTM, a famous rap group. Java is another rap group, though it is not as hardcore as NTM. Dionysos is an indie band that often collaborates with the French singer Olivia Ruiz. And Noir Désir is a good start if you're interested in French rock. But whatever you like, music is a great way to connect with other people. So look around and listen to lots of music. You'll be studying French without even realizing it. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, when I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, when should I use the pronoun on? On is a very useful personal pronoun. It is conjugated exactly the same as il ou elle, meaning he or she, and it means either one or we. On is a special pronoun because sometimes it refers to no one in particular. In English, we might translate it as the general one. For example, à Paris, on peut voir les anciennes maisons d'écrivains célèbres. Means, in Paris, one can see the former homes of famous writers. Because on is used in an indeterminate way, it's very important in making the passive voice. For example, on m'a dit de partir, meaning I was told to leave. Or, on a trouvé un portefeuille, meaning a wallet was found. But more commonly, on is used to mean we. It's actually less formal than using nous. And it connotes that on is a group or une bande in French, so it's more friendly and familiar. Because it's conjugated like il ou elle, it's also easier to conjugate than nous. For example, on est allé au cinéma et on a vu la nouvelle comédie. Means, we went to the movies and saw the new comedy. On is used all the time by native speakers and it's easier to conjugate. So, if you use on, you'll sound more fluent and have less to conjugate. And that's it! If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt! See you soon! Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how does the French school system work and what is the baccalauréat? Le baccalauréat is an exam that students can take at the end of their secondary education. Taking the exam will give you a diploma that shows your skill level of certain subjects. Le baccalauréat, or le bac, is also required in order to go into a university. There are three different types of baccalauréat: le baccalauréat général, le baccalauréat technologique, and le baccalauréat professionnel. Le baccalauréat général is further split up into series, kind of like majors. You can pursue le baccalauréat économique et social, ES, le baccalauréat littéraire, L, or le baccalauréat scientifique, S. This prepares students to enter universities. Le baccalauréat technologique has 8 series and prepares students for working in laboratories, management, or applied arts. Many students go on to study these subjects at university. Le baccalauréat professionnel prepares students to begin working immediately. You can specialize in over 80 different subjects, like industrial maintenance or electric systems. Le bac is scored out of 20, like all French exams. A 10 is a passing grade. A 12 or 13 is assez bien, or satisfactory. 14 or 15 is bien, or good. And 16 or above is très bien, very well done. Le baccalauréat takes a long time to complete. If you take le baccalauréat général série scientifique, you will have to sit for 12 exams total. And some of the exams are 4 hours long. Because of this, students spend their last 2 years preparing for le bac. The school system up until university is quite different from the US system. We'll go through them in chronological order. École maternelle is preschool and starts at age 2 to 5. CP is first grade and the first year of école élémentaire. CE1, CE2, CM1, CM2. Sixième is similar to 6th grade. In France, it is the first year of collège, or middle school. Cinquième, quatrième, troisième. Seconde is the first year of lycée, or high school. Première is when students would begin studying for le bac. This is the year they would take les épreuves anticipées, exams that everyone takes. Terminale is the last year of lycée. Students spend this year studying for the specific type of bac they want to take. If you are a high school student who is dreaming about attending a French university, you're in luck. You don't have to take the bac to apply. You just have to take a French language exam. And that's it. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I form the future tenses and when should I use them? There are 2 future tenses in French, the futur proche and futur simple. Proche means near. When we use futur proche, we're talking about the near future, things that will happen soon. Conjugation is easy. We use the present tense of aller, to go, and then add the infinitive. So the verb nager, to swim, becomes je vais nager, meaning I'm going to swim. Tu vas nager, meaning you're going to swim. Il va nager, meaning he's going to swim, and so on. To make the future simple, we add the stem plus the ending. The verb stem for et and ir verbs is just the infinitive. So the verb stem for nager is nager. The verb stem for finir, to finish, is finir. For re verbs, we drop the i. So vendre becomes vendre. The endings are very similar to the present conjugation of avoir. They're always the same est, a, on, et, on. However, there are irregular stems which you will have to memorize. We go through the most important ones now, saying the verb, its stem, a sample conjugation, and its translation. Aller, ir, j'irai, I will go. Être, ser, tu seras, you will be. Avoir, aur, il aura, we will have. Pouvoir, pour, nous pourrons, we will be able to. Vouloir, voudre, vous voudrez, you will want to. Venir, viendre, elles viendront, they will come. Savoir, saur, je saurai, I will know. Faire, faire, tu feras, you will do or make. Envoyer, envers, elle enverra, she will send. Okay, so which one should you use? You'll use the futur proche for the near future and futur simple for things that are further in the future. If you are going to go swimming right after this lesson, use futur proche. Je vais nager. If you will swim in the ocean on your vacation in Barcelona, use futur simple. Je nagerai dans la mer. Futur simple is also used in some forms, like if statements. But we will cover those in later lessons, so don't worry about it now. If you use mostly futur proche when speaking, you'll be just fine. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below, and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what is l'Académie Française? L'Académie Française, or the French Academy, is the foremost authority on the French language. They are the ones that decide the standards and rules or norms of the French language. The people who make up the Academy are known as immortals or immortels. There are famous writers, academics, and politicians who are elected for life. The Academy was founded in 1635. During the 17th century, France had a thriving salon culture. A salon is a gathering where people interact for amusement and also to spread knowledge through conversation. Here, men and women of different classes could discuss art, politics, and language on equal footing. This salon culture helped establish France as the center of culture. It also made French the language of refinement and reason in Europe. The Academy began as a salon, but Cardinal de Richelieu, chief minister of Louis XIII, took it under his wing. He was determined to create a powerful French state centered around the king. He turned the academy into a public institution and charged it with making clear rules for the French language. But what is the purpose of the academy? Its main goal is to produce the French dictionary. However, it took a long time to finish. The first dictionary published by the academy took 54 years to complete. Today, the Academy still meets and creates dictionaries. Its rules are not always followed, even by members of the government, but it still has a powerful influence on French culture. The French language is one of the main things that binds French people together. Many people see the French language as France's greatest achievement. In the 20th century, Albert Camus famously said, "Ma patrie, c'est la langue française. My homeland is the French language." That said, French people were not always united in language. Instead of one language, there were many regional languages. In 1794, at least 6 million people out of 28 million French citizens couldn't speak French at all. During the French Revolution, for the first time, the government needed the consent of the people. The French language became one way to unify citizens. Some revolutionaries in Paris were extremely suspicious of regional dialects and identities. These days, regional dialects are not as common, but they still exist. Corsican, Breton, Gallo, Basque, Franco-Provençal, Occitan, and Catalan have official status in their regions. And that's it. I hope I answered your question. If you have any more questions, please leave a comment below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, while I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are some English words that French speakers often use? There are a lot of English words that are used in spoken French, and a lot of words of foreign origin in general. However, because they are not considered proper French, they are all treated as slang. L'Académie Française, or the French Academy, regularly comes up with French words to replace these foreign words, but they don't always catch on. Let's take a look at some examples. This one must be the most popular, the word OK. If you want to speak proper French, say d'accord, or its shortened form, dac. But you will hear French people say OK all the time. Here are some more examples. You can probably guess their meanings. Un weekend, un meeting, faire du jogging, faire du shopping, and stress. Clothes are commonly referred to using English words as well. For example, un pull is a pullover. Un sweat, un t-shirt, les jeans. Here's a fun fact. The English word denim actually comes from French, since denim originally came from the French city Nîmes. They were de Nîmes or from Nîmes. Technology-related words are often from English as well. For example, le Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi, cliquer or to click, blog, podcasting, the list goes on. Not that foreign words are always masculine. So a lot of times you can use an English word with a French accent and it will mean the same thing. But there are other times that they can mean a bit different. Let's go through some examples. Un mail is an email, not a letter or postmail. Top actually means best. Here's one that's a bit tricky. An interview. If someone is being interviewed by the press, then it's un interview. If you are going to a job interview, then it's un entretien. Here are also some non-English loan words which comes from Arabic. Un bled means a small town. Le Casbah means house. And kiffer is a verb meaning to like or love. And that's it for now. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, while I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, what are some good words to connect and contrast sentences or thoughts? This is a very important subject. Using connecting words will help you express more complex ideas. It will bring your French to the next level and you'll sound much more fluent. Here are some useful words to get you started. If you want to add more to what you've said, use these phrases. En plus, meaning in addition to. En outre, meaning moreover. Du coup, meaning so that means. Note that du coup is very informal and should only be used in conversation. If you want to show a causal relationship, you might use puisque, meaning since or because. For example, puisque c'est l'été, je mange une glace. This means, since it's summer, I eat ice cream. If you want to contradict a sentence, you might use malgré, meaning despite. An example is, je me suis endormi malgré le bruit, meaning, I fell asleep despite the noise. Cependant and néanmoins both mean however. Quant à means as for example, quant à lui, il n'a pas pu dormir. This means, as for him, he couldn't sleep. Sinon means otherwise. An example is, faites la vaisselle, sinon les abeilles vont revenir. Meaning, wash the dishes, otherwise the bees will come back. Alors que and tandis que both mean whereas or while. And bien que means even though. This needs to be followed by the subjunctive. Okay, that's it. Try using these words in your conversations. They will really help take your French to the next level. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, while I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, when do you pronounce the S in plus? You might think you should never pronounce the S in plus unless it's before a vowel. But French is an irregular language, and plus is no exception. Whether you pronounce the S in plus and whether you don't also depends on what you mean. So when do you pronounce the S? When you want to say there is more of something. For example, j'ai plus d'amis que toi means I have more friends than you. And when don't we pronounce the S? When we are using plus in a negative sense. So if you want to say no longer, we say ne plus. For example, nous ne sommes plus amis, meaning we are no longer friends. So when you have more of something, add an S. When you are missing something, lose the S. This is helpful because French speakers often drop ne in negative constructions. So if someone says j'ai plus d'animaux, you will know they mean they have more animals. If they say j'ai plus d'animaux, you know that they no longer have any animals. That's it. Easy, right? Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, when should I use the subjunctive? Le subjunctive can be difficult for English speakers, since English doesn't really have a subjunctive mood. Luckily, conjugating the subjunctive is pretty easy. The endings are always the same, but there are some irregular stems. We'll go over some of the irregular stems in this lesson so you can get used to them. So when do we use the subjunctive? We use the subjunctive after expressions like craindre de, to fear, aimer que, to like, détester que, to hate, souhaiter que, to wish, douter que, to doubt, sembler que, to seem, and falloir que, to have to or must. What do these expressions have in common? They express fear, a wish, command, and uncertainty. Things like this are what we have subjective feelings about. Okay, let's look at some examples. Je suis content que tu sois content, meaning I'm happy that you're happy, is a feeling, and je veux qu'il le fasse, meaning I want him to do it, expresses a will or desire. There are a few things to note here. One, we need two subjects for the subjunctive. One person wanting, wishing, fearing, or demanding another person to do something. Second, take a look at this sentence. Elle ne pense pas que je parle français. This is where subjunctive can get tricky. She doesn't think that I can speak French, meaning she doubts that I can. If she thinks I can, then there is no attitude of doubt. In this case, we don't use the subjunctive. So, ne pas penser que, to not think, uses the subjunctive, whereas penser que, to think, doesn't. Do people use the subjunctive in spoken French? This is a tough question. In written French, you must use the subjunctive when necessary, but in spoken French, it's not so common. However, if you want to speak proper, elegant French, then definitely use the subjunctive. Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I make if statements in French? If statements are a great example of conditional sentences. This means that one part of the sentence is conditional to the other part. It can only happen if the other one does. There are three ways of making an if statement, and they vary in how likely or unlikely something is to happen. First, let's talk about the most likely. To make this statement, we use the present tense or the present perfect with the future tense. If I see him, I will say hello. Si je le vois, je lui dirai bonjour. It's not certain that you will see him, but if you do, it's certain that you will say bonjour. Next, let's talk about something that is unlikely. Here, you should use the imperfect and the conditional. This form describes what would happen if the first part comes true. At the moment, it's not true, but it could be. For example, si on pratiquait, on serait intouchable. Meaning, if we practiced, we would be unstoppable. you probably remember the imperfect. You use it to describe things you used to do in the past. The conditional tense might be new to you. To form the conditional, use the same stem as the futur simple and add the imparfait endings. Easy, right? Finally, let's talk about things that are impossible. This uses the conditional perfect. This form is purely hypothetical. You're saying if things had gone differently in the past, then things would be this way. For example, si j'avais écouté ma mère, je n'aurais pas été dans ce pétrin. This means if I had listened to my mother, I wouldn't have been in this mess. Let's have more examples. For a situation where something would really happen if the condition is fulfilled. Si tu écoutes encore ce podcast, ton français s'améliorera. Meaning, if you listen to this podcast again, your French will improve. For a situation where the condition is yet to be fulfilled, si tu pratiquais chaque jour, ton français serait quasiment parfait. This means if you practiced every day, your French would be almost perfect. Lastly, for a condition that is impossible to alter, si tu étais né en France, tu aurais déjà parlé couramment français. This means if you were born in France, you would already speak French fluently. Okay, well, that's all for this lesson. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt, see you soon. Hi everybody, Candice here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer your most common French questions. The question for this lesson is, how do you say something looks like, resemble, smells like, or tastes like? First, let's go through the useful verbs. Ressembler means to resemble. An example is, il ressemble à un acteur que je connais, meaning he looks like an actor I know. Another verb is se ressembler, meaning to look alike. Elles viennent d'autres coins du monde, mais elles se ressemblent quand même. Means they come from different sides of the earth, but they resemble each other anyway. Avoir l'air de means to seem like or to look like. An example is ce repas a l'air bon, meaning this meal looks good. Another example is cette fille a l'air un peu nerveuse, meaning this girl looks a little nervous. The verb sentir means to smell like, to taste like, or to feel like. Sentir has a lot of definitions. So let's go over this in more detail. Overall, you can think of sentir as meaning to have the feeling of. Sentir, se sentir et ressentir can be used to talk about emotional feelings and thoughts. But with sentir, the feeling can also be taste, smell, or touch. You can tell what it means by context, but it's usually used to mean to smell like. If someone walks into the room, covers their nose, and says, "Ça sent les chaussettes," you know that they mean, "It smells like socks." If someone is eating a soup and says, "Ça sent les champignons," this means it has the taste of mushrooms. If someone says this, they probably mean there is just the hint of mushrooms in the soup. The last verb is avoir le goût de, to taste like. An example with this is, "Ça a le goût de quoi exactement?" This means, what does it taste like exactly? Be careful not to mix up avoir le goût de and goûter, because goûter means to literally taste something and you can't use it to say something tastes like. The subject has to be a person. So, un potage ne peut pas goûter d'ail means a soup cannot taste the garlic. And it doesn't make any sense. The correct sentence would look like this. Je voudrais goûter le vin d'Alsace. I would like to try Alsatian wine. Goûter is a great verb for sharing and for trying new food, which you definitely want to do in France. Here are more examples. Tu veux le goûter? Meaning, do you want to try it? Or, goûter le pain, il est frais. Meaning, try the bread, it's fresh. And that's it for this lesson. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I try to answer them. À bientôt. See you soon.
Welcome to Can Do French by FrenchPod101.com.
Bonjour à tous, je suis Lia Mercier. Hi everyone, I'm Lia Mercier. In this lesson, you learn how to introduce yourself in French.
This is Mark Lee, and he's on a plane to France. Hugues Henry, a passenger sitting next to him, introduces himself by saying, Hi, my name is Hugues. Nice to meet you.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Hugues. Enchanté.
Listen to the conversation and focus on Mark's response. Note, both Hugues and Mark use only their first names. Ready?
Bonjour, je m'appelle Hugues. Enchanté.
Je m'appelle Marc. Enchanté.
Once more with the English translation.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Hugues. Enchanté.
Hi, my name is Hugues. Nice to meet you.
Je m'appelle Marc. Enchanté.
My name is Mark. Nice to meet you.
Let's take a closer look at Mark's response.
Do you remember how Mark Lee introduces himself? My name is Mark. Nice to meet you.
Je m'appelle Marc. Enchanté.
Let's start with the expression.
Enchanté.
This literally means enchanted, but it translates as nice to meet you.
Enchanté. Enchanté.
Do you remember how Mark Lee says, My name is Mark?
Je m'appelle Marc.
First is
Je.
I.
Je. Je.
Next is,
M'appelle.
which translates as call myself.
M'appelle. M'appelle.
This starts with
Me.
me.
Me. Me.
Next is
Appelle.
call, as in I call.
Appelle. Appelle. Appelle.
Is from the verb,
Appeler.
meaning to call.
Appeler. Me.
Is contracted with
Appelle.
to form.
M'appelle.
Together,
Je m'appelle.
literally means I myself call, but it translates as my name is.
Je m'appelle.
Next is the name
Marc.
Mark.
Marc. Marc.
Together it's
Je m'appelle Marc.
my name is Mark.
Je m'appelle Marc.
The pattern is
Je m'appelle name.
my name is name.
Je m'appelle name.
To use this pattern, simply replace the name placeholder with your name. Imagine you're Karen. In French,
Karen. Karen. Karen.
say, My name is Karen. Ready?
Je m'appelle Karen.
My name is Karen.
Je m'appelle Karen.
In written French, the spelling of the expression enchanté will depend on the genders of a speaker. For male speakers, enchanté. For female speakers, enchanté. Note the additional E at the end of the word. The pronunciation of these two variations will be exactly the same.
Let's look at some more examples. Listen and repeat or speak along with the native speakers.
Je m'appelle Hugues. Enchanté. Je m'appelle Hugues. Enchanté.
Je m'appelle Marc. Enchanté. Je m'appelle Marc. Enchanté.
Je m'appelle Karen. Enchantée. Je m'appelle Karen. Enchantée.
Je m'appelle Lia. Enchantée. Je m'appelle Lia. Enchantée.
Je suis Sadia, enchantée. Je suis Sadia, enchantée.
Did you notice how the last speaker uses a different pattern?
She says,
Je suis Sadia, enchantée.
I'm Sadia. Nice to meet you.
Je suis Sadia, enchantée.
First is
Je. Je
Next is
suis.
am.
Suis. Suis. Suis.
Is from the verb,
Être.
meaning to be.
Être.
Next is the name,
Sadia.
Sadia.
Sadia. Sadia.
Altogether,
Je suis Sadia.
I am Sadia.
Je suis Sadia.
The pattern is,
Je suis name.
I am name.
Je suis name.
You should be aware of this pattern, but for this lesson, we'll use the pattern,
Je m'appelle name.
My name is name.
Je m'appelle name.
Let's review the key vocabulary.
Bonjour.
Hi,
Bonjour. Bonjour. Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say I? Je. Je. And how to say I call myself? Je m'appelle. Je m'appelle. Do you remember how Mark says, My name is Mark? Je m'appelle Marc. Je m'appelle Marc. Do you remember how to say, Nice to meet you? Enchanté. Enchanté. Do you remember how Mark says, My name is Mark. Nice to meet you?
Je m'appelle Marc. Enchanté.
Je m'appelle Marc. Enchanté. Do you remember how Hugues says hi? Bonjour. Bonjour. Do you remember how Hugues says, "Hi, my name is Hugues. Nice to meet you."
Bonjour, je m'appelle Hugues. Enchanté.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Hugues. Enchanté.
Let's practice. Imagine you're Karen.
Karen.
Respond to Hugues' self-introduction. Ready?
Bonjour, je m'appelle Hugues. Enchanté.
Je m'appelle Karen. Enchantée.
Listen again and repeat.
Je m'appelle Karen. Enchantée. Je m'appelle Karen. Enchantée.
Let's try another. Imagine you're Sadia.
Sadia.
Ready?
Bonjour, je m'appelle Hugues. Enchanté.
Je m'appelle Sadia. Enchantée.
Listen again and repeat.
Je m'appelle Sadia. Enchantée. Je m'appelle Sadia. Enchantée.
Let's try one more. Imagine you're Leah.
Leah.
Ready?
Bonjour, je m'appelle Hugues. Enchanté.
Je m'appelle Leah. Enchantée.
Listen again and repeat.
Je m'appelle Leah. Enchantée. Je m'appelle Leah. Enchantée. In France, when two people meet for the first time, it's also common to just say your name on its own. Right after saying bonjour, you pause a bit and give your name. For example, bonjour, Leah. Enchantée. Hello, Leah. Nice to meet you. This is the end of this lesson.
Remember, these can-do lessons are about learning practical language skills. What's next? Show us what you can do. When you're ready, take your assessment. You can take it again and again, so try any time you like. Our teachers will assess it and give you your results.
Well done! Now you know how to introduce yourself in French. That's all there is to it. Keep practicing and move on to the next lesson. This is the end of this lesson.
Now, here's what you can do to cement this conversation in your head. Review the conversation with our dialogue tool and lesson transcripts. Study the key words and phrases with our spaced repetition flashcards. Review the key grammar and cultural tips inside the lesson notes. And test yourself with our assessment tests. So click the link in the description right now and sign up for your free lifetime account to access our Can-Do course.
Well done! Now you know how to introduce yourself in French. That's all there is to it. Keep practicing and move on to the next lesson.
Welcome to Can Do French by FrenchPod101.com.
Bonjour à tous, je suis Lia Mercier. Hi everyone, I'm Lia Mercier. In this lesson, you'll learn how to tell someone where you are from in French.
This is Mark Lee, and he's on a plane to France. Hugues Henry, a passenger sitting next to him, asks, "Where are you from?"
D'où venez-vous?
Listen to the conversation and focus on Mark's response. Note, the speakers in this conversation use formal French. Ready?
D'où venez-vous?
Je viens de New York.
Once more with the English translation.
D'où venez-vous?
Where are you from?
Je viens de New York.
I'm from New York.
Let's take a closer look at the conversation.
Do you remember how Hugues Henry asks, "Where are you from?"
D'où venez-vous?
First is
D'où?
from where.
D'où?
This starts with
De.
which translates as from in this context.
De. De.
Next is
Où?
meaning where.
Où? Où? De.
Is contracted with
Où?
to form.
D'où?
Next is
Venez.
come, as in you come.
Venez. Venez. Venez.
Is from the verb
Venir.
meaning to come.
Venir.
After this is
Vous.
which is literally the plural form of you, as in you all. But it's also the formal way to address a single person, as is the case here.
Vous. Vous.
Together
Venez-vous?
translates as you come.
Venez-vous?
Altogether
D'où venez-vous?
literally means from where come you, but it translates as where are you from?
D'où venez-vous?
Remember this question. You'll hear it again later in this lesson.
Now, let's take a closer look at the response.
Do you remember how Mark Lee says, "I'm from New York"?
Je viens de New York.
First is
Je.
I.
Je.
Next is
Viens.
meaning come, as in I come.
Viens. Viens. Viens.
Is from the verb
Venir.
meaning to come.
Venir.
After this is
De.
which means from in this context.
De.
Last is the city,
New York.
New York.
New York. New York.
Altogether it's
Je viens de New York.
this literally means I come from New York, but can translate as I'm from New York.
Je viens de New York.
The pattern is
Je viens de city name.
I'm from city name.
Je viens de city name.
To use this pattern, simply replace the city name placeholder with the name of your hometown. Imagine you're from Sydney.
Sydney. Sydney. Sydney.
Say, I'm from Sydney. Ready?
Je viens de Sydney.
I'm from Sydney.
Je viens de Sydney. When talking about where you're from, de is used before feminine nouns. All cities are feminine in French, so when talking about your hometown or home city, use de. You can also use this pattern with countries. However, countries can be either masculine or feminine. If you use this pattern with a country name that's masculine, use du instead of de. For example, je viens de France. France, France, is feminine. Je viens du Japon. Japon, Japan, is masculine.
Let's look at some examples. Listen and repeat, or speak along with the native speakers.
Je viens de New York. Je viens de New York.
Je viens de Nantes. Je viens de Nantes.
Je viens de Seattle. Je viens de Seattle.
Je viens de Londres. Je viens de Londres.
Je viens de Paris. Je viens de Paris.
Je suis australienne. Je suis australienne.
Did you notice how the last speaker uses a different pattern?
She says,
Je suis australienne.
I'm Australian.
Je suis australienne.
First is
Je,
I.
je.
Next is
Suis,
am, as in I am.
suis, suis, suis.
Is from the verb,
Être,
meaning to be.
être.
Together it's,
Je suis,
meaning I am.
je suis.
After this is,
Australienne,
meaning Australian.
australienne, australienne,
Note,
australienne.
is feminine. This pattern is,
Je suis nationality.
I'm nationality.
Je suis nationality.
In Mia Martin's case, she uses the feminine adjective
Australienne,
to describe herself.
Je suis australienne.
In the case of a male speaker from Australia, he would use a masculine adjective
australien,
to describe himself.
Je suis australien.
I'm Australian.
Je suis australien.
You should be aware of this pattern, but for this lesson, we'll use the pattern
je viens de, city name.
I'm from city name.
Je viens de, city name.
Let's review the key vocabulary.
Nantes,
Nantes,
Nantes, Nantes. Seattle,
Seattle,
Seattle, Seattle. Londres,
London,
Londres, Londres. Paris,
Paris,
Paris, Paris. Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say New York? New York. New York. And how to say from New York? De New York. De New York. Do you remember how to say I? Je. Do you remember how Mark Lee says, I'm from New York?
Je viens de New York.
Je viens de New York. Do you remember the formal way to say you? Vous. Vous. And how to say from where? D'où. D'où. Do you remember how Hugues Henry asks, where are you from?
D'où venez-vous?
D'où venez-vous? Do you remember how to say London? Londres. Londres. Do you remember how to say Seattle? Seattle. Seattle. Do you remember how to say Paris? Paris. Paris.
Let's practice. Imagine you're Jack Jones from London. Respond to Hugues Henry's question. Ready?
D'où venez-vous?
Je viens de Londres.
Listen again and repeat.
Je viens de Londres. Je viens de Londres.
Let's try another. Imagine you're Emma Auge from Seattle. Ready?
D'où venez-vous?
Je viens de Seattle.
Listen again and repeat.
Je viens de Seattle. Je viens de Seattle.
Let's try one more. Imagine you're Liam Mercier from Paris. Ready?
D'où venez-vous?
Je viens de Paris.
Listen again and repeat.
Je viens de Paris. Je viens de Paris. This is the end of this lesson.
Remember, these can-do lessons are about learning practical language skills. What's next? Show us what you can do. When you're ready, take your assessment. You can take it again and again, so try anytime you like. Our teachers will assess it and give you your results.
Well done! Now you know how to tell where you are from in French. That's all there is to it. Keep practicing and move on to the next lesson. This is the end of this lesson.
Now, here's what you can do to cement this conversation in your head. Review the conversation with our dialogue tool and lesson transcripts. Study the key words and phrases with our spaced repetition flashcards. Review the key grammar and cultural tips inside the lesson notes. And test yourself with our assessment tests. So click the link in the description right now and sign up for your free lifetime account to access our Can-Do course.
Well done! Now you know how to tell where you are from in French. That's all there is to it. Keep practicing and move on to the next lesson.
Welcome to Can Do French by FrenchPod101.com.
Bonjour à tous, je suis Lia Mercier. Hi everyone, I'm Lia Mercier. In this lesson, you'll learn how to talk about your occupation in French.
This is Mark Lee, and he's on a plane to France. He asks the passenger sitting next to him, Hugues Henry, "Are you a student?"
Êtes-vous étudiant?
Listen to the conversation and focus on Hugues' response. The speakers in this conversation use formal French. Ready?
Êtes-vous étudiant?
Non, je ne suis pas étudiant. Je suis investisseur.
Once more with the English translation.
Êtes-vous étudiant?
Are you a student?
Non, je ne suis pas étudiant. Je suis investisseur.
No, I'm not a student. I'm an investor.
Let's take a closer look at the conversation.
Do you remember how Mark asks, "Are you a student?"
Êtes-vous étudiant?
First is
Être,
are, as in, are you?
être, être, être,
Is from the verb,
être,
meaning to be.
être.
After this is
Vous,
the plural form of you, as in you all. But here it's the formal way to address a single person.
vous, vous.
Together,
Êtes-vous,
are you, when addressing a single person.
êtes-vous,
Last is the word
étudiant,
student.
étudiant, étudiant.
In French, all nouns have grammatical gender and are either singular or plural.
Étudiant,
Is masculine singular. Altogether, it's
êtes-vous étudiant?
are you a student?
Êtes-vous étudiant?
Now, let's take a closer look at the response.
Do you remember how Hugues says, "No, I'm not a student. I'm an investor"?
Non, je ne suis pas étudiant. Je suis investisseur.
First is
Non,
no.
non, non.
It answers Mark's yes or no question, "Are you a student?"
Êtes-vous étudiant?
After this, Hugues specifies that he's not a student.
Je ne suis pas étudiant.
I'm not a student.
Je ne suis pas étudiant.
First is
Je,
I.
je.
After this is
Ne suis pas,
meaning am not.
ne suis pas.
Let's start with
Suis,
meaning am, as in I am.
suis, suis, suis.
Is from the verb,
Être,
meaning to be.
être.
Before the verb is
Ne, ne, ne.
after the verb is
Pas, pas, pas.
together,
Ne, pas,
means not.
ne, pas.
Altogether, it's
Je ne suis pas,
I am not.
je ne suis pas.
Next is
Étudiant,
student.
étudiant.
Altogether,
Je ne suis pas étudiant,
I'm not a student.
je ne suis pas étudiant.
Hugues then tells Mark his actual occupation.
Je suis investisseur,
I'm an investor.
Je suis investisseur.
First is
Je.
I.
Je
Next is
suis.
am, as in I am.
Suis.
Last is
Investisseur.
investor.
Investisseur. Investisseur.
The word
Investisseur.
is a masculine singular noun. Together,
Je suis investisseur.
I'm an investor.
Je suis investisseur.
All together,
Non, je ne suis pas étudiant. Je suis investisseur.
no, I'm not a student. I'm an investor.
Non, je ne suis pas étudiant. Je suis investisseur.
The pattern is
Non, je ne suis pas occupation. Je suis actual occupation.
no, I'm not occupation. I'm actual occupation.
Non, je ne suis pas occupation. Je suis actual occupation.
Imagine you're Emma Auge, a student. The word for female student is
Étudiante. Étudiante. Étudiante.
Ook asks if you're a teacher. The word for a female teacher is
Professeur. Professeur. Professeur.
say, no, I'm not a teacher. I'm a student. Ready?
Non, je ne suis pas professeur, je suis étudiante.
No, I'm not a teacher. I'm a student.
Non, je ne suis pas professeur, je suis étudiante.
Let's look at some more examples. Listen and repeat or speak along with the native speakers.
Non, je ne suis pas étudiant. Je suis investisseur. Non, je ne suis pas étudiant. Je suis investisseur.
Non, je ne suis pas professeur, je suis étudiante. Non, je ne suis pas professeur, je suis étudiante.
Non, je ne suis pas professeur. Je suis ingénieur. Non, je ne suis pas professeur. Je suis ingénieur.
Non, je ne suis pas infirmière, je suis médecin. Non, je ne suis pas infirmière, je suis médecin.
Non, je ne suis pas étudiante. Je suis professeur. Non, je ne suis pas étudiante. Je suis professeur.
Non, je suis barista. Non, je suis barista.
Did you notice how the last speaker omits part of the response?
Non, je suis barista.
No, I'm a barista.
Non, je suis barista.
When directly responding to someone's question, it's often possible to omit part of the response. Here, by simply answering,
Non,
no, there's no need to say,
je ne suis pas étudiant.
I'm not a student. The pattern is,
Non, je suis actual occupation.
no, I'm actual occupation.
Non, je suis actual occupation.
You should be aware of this pattern, but for this lesson, we'll use the pattern.
Non, je ne suis pas occupation. Je suis actual occupation.
No, I'm not occupation. I'm actual occupation.
Non, je ne suis pas occupation. Je suis actual occupation.
Let's review the key vocabulary. Student,
Étudiant. Étudiant. Étudiante. Étudiante.
Teacher.
Professeur. 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 Professeur.
Engineer.
Ingénieur. 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 Ingénieur.
Nurse.
Infirmier. Infirmier. Infirmière. Infirmière. Médecin.
Doctor.
Médecin. Médecin. Barista.
Barista.
Barista. Barista. Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then, repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember the word for a male investor? Investisseur. Investisseur. And how to say I? Je. Je. Do you remember how Hugues says, I'm an investor? Je suis investisseur. Je suis investisseur. Do you remember the word for a male student? Étudiant. Étudiant. Do you remember how Hugues says, I'm not a student? Je ne suis pas étudiant. Je ne suis pas étudiant. Do you remember how Hugues Henry says, I'm not a student, I'm an investor?
Je ne suis pas étudiant, je suis investisseur.
Je ne suis pas étudiant. Je suis investisseur. Do you remember the formal way to say you? Vous. Vous. Do you remember how Mark Lee asks, Are you a student? Remember, Mark uses formal French.
Êtes-vous étudiant?
Êtes-vous étudiant? Do you remember the word for a female student? Étudiante. Étudiante. And the word for a male teacher? Professeur. Professeur. Do you remember the word for a female teacher? Professeur. Professeur. Do you remember the word for a male engineer? Ingénieur. Ingénieur.
Let's practice. Imagine you're Mark Lee and you're an engineer. Respond to Hugues' question. Ready?
Êtes-vous professeur?
Non, je ne suis pas professeur. Je suis ingénieur.
Listen again and repeat.
Non, je ne suis pas professeur. Je suis ingénieur. Non, je ne suis pas professeur. Je suis ingénieur.
Let's try another. Imagine you're Liam Mercier, and you're a teacher. Ready?
Êtes-vous étudiante?
Non, je ne suis pas étudiante. Je suis professeure.
Listen again and repeat.
Non, je ne suis pas étudiante. Je suis professeure. Non, je ne suis pas étudiante. Je suis professeure.
Let's try one more. Now, imagine you're Emma Auge, and you're a student. Ready?
Êtes-vous professeur?
Non, je ne suis pas professeur. Je suis étudiante.
Listen again and repeat.
Non, je ne suis pas professeur. Je suis étudiante. Non, je ne suis pas professeur. Je suis étudiante.
This is the end of this lesson.
Remember, these can-do lessons are about learning practical language skills. What's next? Show us what you can do. When you're ready, take your assessment. You can take it again and again, so try anytime you like. Our teachers will assess it and give you your results.
Well done! Now you know how to talk about your occupation in French. That's all there is to it. Keep practicing and move on to the next lesson. This is the end of this lesson.
Now, here's what you can do to cement this conversation in your head. Review the conversation with our dialogue tool and lesson transcripts. Study the key words and phrases with our spaced repetition flashcards. Review the key grammar and cultural tips inside the lesson notes. And test yourself with our assessment tests. So click the link in the description right now and sign up for your free lifetime account to access our Can-Do course.
Well done! Now you know how to talk about your occupation in French. That's all there is to it. Keep practicing and move on to the next lesson.
Hi, welcome to Introduction to French. My name is Alicia, and I'm joined by...
Hi everyone, I'm Candice.
In this lesson, you'll learn the basics of French grammar. In some languages, like French, nouns are divided into different classes.
For example, French divides nouns into two classes using gender, masculine and feminine.
Let's take a look at some masculine nouns.
Lit, fromage, village, livre.
Now, feminine nouns.
Cuillère, bout, revue, syllabe.
There are some rules for learning the gender of French nouns, but they're quite complex. Many consider the designation of gender to be largely arbitrary, so it's likely that you'll just have to memorize them. Okay, so now you know that nouns are divided into gender classes, but why is this important?
Learning gender nouns is important for forming sentences in French. For example, lit means bed in French, and it's a masculine noun. If you want to refer to the bed in a sentence, however, you need to add le before the noun. Le lit. In fact, if you want to refer to any masculine noun in French, you need to use le or un. Le fromage, le village, un livre. On the other hand, we use la and une to refer to feminine nouns. La cuillère, la boue, une revue, une syllabe.
Now you know how to refer to nouns in French. Similar to nouns, French verbs can also be separated into different classes.
There are 3 classes of verbs in French, and they are verbs ending in « et », manger, nager, travailler, aimer. Verbs ending in « ir », finir, ralentir, réagir. And verbs ending in « re », voir, and « ir », mourir, recevoir, lire.
Each class of verbs will be conjugated differently when used in a sentence. Let's take a look at a few examples to see how they differ.
To swim is nager in French, and it comes from the first group because it ends in « et ».
I swim in the present tense would be,
Je nage,
past tense would be,
je nageais,
and the future tense would be.
je nagerai.
Let's compare that to a verb in group 2.
To finish is finir in French, and it comes from the second group because it ends in ir. Je finis, je finissais, je finirai.
Finally, a verb from group 3.
To read is lire in French, and it comes from the third group because it ends with re. Je lis, je lisais, je lirai.
We'll teach you how to properly conjugate verbs of different classes in future lessons. For now, just know that there are 3 different categories of verbs in French. Okay, now you know about nouns and verbs in French. Let's learn how to form basic sentences in French.
Forming sentences in French is quite simple, especially for English speakers, as French uses the same word order as English.
Consider the following example.
Le garçon mange un gâteau.
In English, this sentence means, the boy eats a cake.
If we break down the French sentence, we can see that the order matches the English sentence one-to-one. Le, de, garçon, boy, mange, eats, un, gâteau, cake.
We can create basic sentences in French simply by exchanging English words for French words.
Notice how we use un here, because gâteau is a masculine noun. If the object had been a feminine noun, we'd have used une instead.
We can create any basic sentence in French by starting with a subject, in this case, the boy.
Le garçon.
Then follow it with a verb, eats,
mange.
And finally, end with the object, the cake.
Un gâteau.
As you can see, the word order in French is just like English. Finally, let's learn how to create negative sentences in French.
Negating sentences in French is simple. Simply add ne before the verb and pas after it. J'ai, je n'ai pas. J'aime lire, je n'aime pas lire. Juliette mange, Juliette ne mange pas. You can negate any basic sentence in French this way.
Well done! Let's wrap up this lesson by recapping what we've learned. In this lesson, you learned that French nouns are divided into 2 classes, masculine and feminine. Similar to nouns, French verbs are divided into 3 groups. French uses the same subject, verb, object, word order like English. And finally, you learned how to negate sentences in French. We've covered only the very basics of French grammar. If you're interested in learning more, check out our French in 3 Minutes video series. In that course, we teach you useful phrases while covering the fundamentals of French grammar, and each lesson is only 3 minutes long. In the next lesson, we'll introduce you to the basics of French writing. See you in the next lesson. Bye!
Bye!
Expand your vocabulary with our core 2,000 words ebook. It's free and packed with essential expressions that you'll use on a daily basis. Start building your vocabulary today. Click the link in the description below to download your free French ebook before it's gone.